begin talking about people that are in the other world. First off, we're all in the other world. A lovely statement that you see here and there is that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's a good perspective to start off with, is to realize the Lord's purpose and goal in creation of human beings on earth is that the human beings on earth, with the spirit that they have, are living already in the spiritual world, and that when the body is done doing what it does while on earth, the spirit, which is the true person, then continues life in the other world. We keep track of who's on earth and who's gone into the other world. February, I just want to note that a number of people have left us. Some in February of last year. We think about the people that have gone into the other world. I have a list of people. Some of you may remember Mary Baker, who was 104 when she left this world back in February 15th, 11 years ago. Carol Brannon, and mother of our dear assistant pastor's wife, Justine, left for the other world a few years back. Amanda Fisher, Keith Morley, and Rachel Morley, both, this couple died, one in February a few years ago, and then last year when Rachel left. Richard Parker. Well, the list goes on, but not just February passages. John Winkle, Don and Ann Barber, Bob Delier, Alith, Bob Anderson, Tom Bradfield. I could keep listing people that we have known in the Olivet Society who have passed along into the other world. They lived their lives. We're living our lives. We will be the next crop. We will be the next harvest. And that's the point. That's the point of life on earth. So how do we think about that transition? Do we think about it with fear? Think about it with hope? Think about it with anxiety? Think about the many reasons why we could be very happy to be leaving a natural body that perhaps isn't serving us as well as it used to. And oftentimes very, very sad that we're leaving behind people, but also happy to think about rejoining with people that have gone on before us, like some of the names of the people that have been mentioned just now. So I mentioned in the mail out that went concerning the class, the title of the class being Many Happy Returns. So I wanted to focus tonight on the doctrines that have to do, the teachings from the Word that have to do with what does return and what doesn't. I think a lot of people, a lot of times, couples may be concerned about what's going on with my married partner now that it's been a year or 2 years or 10 years or 20 years. Sometimes we can be separated from our married partner for a long period of time. People can be concerned, widows and widowers, about what it is that their partner's doing, and do they still remember me? We're going to talk a little bit about the section actually in conjugal love specifically related to that. It's also mentioned in conjugal love as well as some other places in what's called the spiritual diary. But first I'm just going to start out with some of the general teachings. Perhaps you're very familiar with them about life in the other world and what the process is. I mentioned a book, again in the mail out, called The Spiritual World. It's a pretty thick book. Pages are pretty thick too. Paper's thick. By Hugo Odhner, just a wonderful scholar of New Church teachings. And in it, he follows a discussion bringing together, weaving together the two main areas in the Word of the New Church, in heaven and hell. There's a whole section on just the process of resuscitation, being awakened. It's also following what had already been written earlier on in the book Arcana Coelestia. So there's several interchapter material sections that are broken down into much smaller little bites that are recollected and then put into heaven and hell. And both of those borrow from things that had been written in what's called the spiritual diary, as mentioned, but also in Hugo Odhner's work, he's drawing upon all the body of the writings by that point. So there's a number of passages from TCR, True Christian Religion, and passages from books on conjugal love, De Conjugio, written in Latin, and some other of the teachings. So there's a very big body of teachings concerning the nature of, from the moment that we're going to die, because we're all going to die, the Lord sees in providence, and there's mentioned a number of things that are all lined up that when coming together, we can't see it, but the Lord does in seeing the timing for when we do pass. Our effect on the people in this world, our effect on the spirits in the other world, our effect on the spirits that are with us, more specifically our individual spiritual associations, etc. So when people die, what happens? What's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to me when I die? I'm going to wake up in the other world, right? You've heard the passage over and over again, the passages that talk about that. One of the things that people bring with them into the new church when they first are aware of the teachings are obviously what they've heard about a certain subject previously. And sometimes people will say, that's exactly what I believed. Other times they'll go, that is brand new. There are so many brand new teachings related to life after death in the new church that oftentimes Heaven and Hell, the book itself, is considered one of the best books to give somebody to say, here's what we believe. Here's what we understand, because in the book Heaven and Hell, interwoven are basically all the teachings having to do with the new church, because all the angels believe the things that are the doctrines of the new church. But people come into the new church and they might think, well, it says what's going to happen is in a twinkle of an eye. There's a passage that Paul wrote in one of the epistles concerning passing away and coming into the world in the twinkling of an eye. This was taken from, especially championed by a Jewish rabbi that Paul was a student of. But it's not just the twinkling of an eye. We don't just all of a sudden wake up. There is a whole process by means of which the Lord draws our spirit, gives us what we need in order to make the transition. So obviously a death of the body, you don't want to be morbid about it, but when the heart and lungs stop, one or the other or both. And ultimately that refers finally to the operation of the brain itself just ceasing. And does the spirit immediately leave the body? Actually, the teachings are that the spirit dwells or is around or hovers around the body for some period of time. And one of the big challenges of this subject is we're talking about something that's happening in the natural world that's going to have an effect in the spiritual world, although the spiritual world is the world of effects and the natural world, or the spiritual world is the world of causes and the natural world is the world of effects. So if something's happening here, is it affecting the spiritual world or the other way around? How can you measure the time going on in the natural world related to what's happening in the spiritual world? So we think about somebody passing, and in 3 days they're waking up in the spiritual world. Yeah, we have to try to not be too stuck in things of time and space when we're dealing with the way things take place in the spiritual world. The Word itself has to be written in a space and time basis. It has to be written in natural language. It's written down in a certain time, etc. But its spiritual sense and the meaning beyond what's just in the literal sense are things beyond time and space. So even the writings themselves, when talking about 3 days, 3, as we know, corresponds to a full state, when the time is ready. And it's not 3 full days. 3 days could span basically 25 hours, right? You could say the very last minute of one day, the next day, and then the very first minute of the next day is a span of 3 days. The Lord himself died on a Friday afternoon was resurrected on a Sunday morning. It was a span of 3 days, but it wasn't 3 full days. So the first thing to try to remember is not to get caught up in the days or the years that are mentioned about people that are in the other world. Does my mother or my father, who died 20, 30 years ago, do they remember me, their little boy, who's now older than both of them basically while they were on the earth? What's the time? What's the time period? Have they been waiting a long time? Have they forgotten about me? Just me thinking about it, just you thinking about the person that you love, has an effect in the spiritual world. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So, the best analogy to use, and it's used over and over again in the literal sense of the Old Testament, New Testament, as well as the teachings of the New Church, is the analogy, excuse me, of death being like a sleep, a kind of sleep. If you've ever been put to sleep under anesthesia, you might notice you go and you wake up and you wonder, when are they going to put me to sleep? Because the sense of time, oftentimes under certain drugs, the drug that puts you to sleep before an operation or before some procedure, takes away the natural processes that are going on in the brain that let you know when you go to sleep. Normally, you feel like you wake up refreshed, or you feel like you got no sleep. You feel like maybe you were asleep for a couple hours and you were probably right. Maybe it was a good night's sleep and you're probably right. We have a sense of time as we go to sleep or while we're sleeping under normal circumstances. When we die, that sense of time is not what we would normally expect it to be. So we're told that there's a 3-point or 3-stage process of not just the waking up in the other world. We know there's stages there, but even in the death and the beginning of waking up. And the first one has to do with what the Lord's work is while we are, as it were, asleep in death. What the Lord does first. We know that after the Lord, celestial angels come, and spiritual angels, and natural angels, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process later on. But the first work that's done is concerning the finest things of our spirit, the finest things of our natural life in conjunction with our spiritual life. Oh, there's a Latin term for that called the Limbus. It means limits, the boundaries. The Lord is operating right after we have severed that connection between the spirit and the body in a state of, as it were, unconsciousness or sleep. So the Lord is working to draw together and organize the remains that we have, all the good states. The Lord is firming them up in ways that can never happen while we're conscious in certain ways, and will need to be in a solid state or in an organized state before we begin to wake up in the other world. So there's as it were, spiritual conception and gestation of the new spiritual body that's going to be waking up in 3 days, going to be waking up in whatever that period of time is. Before we begin to be conscious in the other world, the Lord is doing midwifery work of the spirit, of the soul, indeed. That's mentioned in a couple of different places in the writings. We're told that the limbus, which is the finest things of our natural life, they ultimately recede. It's like a cutaneous covering. They, as it were, dissolve, but never completely. So we will always be the person that we had been while on earth. We're never going to be dissolved from that human life that we had. And especially, it's contained within things of the internal and external memory. So if you have a memory that's beginning to go in this world, it's going to return. It's going to return, and everything you ever did, everything we thought, everything we felt, everything we thought maybe we would like to do, all the states of peace and love, everything is retained. And the Lord's pulling those things together and unifying them in the first stage of the resuscitation. In the second stage, the Lord is letting the spiritual and celestial angels become aware of the work they're going to do. You kind of wonder, well, does the Lord have it lined up that, this morning celestial angels get up and it's like, okay, it's Michael Cowley's turn. He's going to be coming. He passed away from this natural world. He's on his way here. And so then they get their assignment and they find where my spiritual body is being born into the spiritual world, and they're just waiting there at my head, as it says, celestial angels. They'll be waiting there. I don't know. It doesn't describe how they get the message, except there's an awareness that they have because it's their love to welcome people. So there's an awareness. And also, I'm never alone. Right now, the celestial angels who are with me, the spiritual angels, my natural, my associate spirits, they're all very perceptive of the states I'm going through right now as I give this talk, right now as I'm thinking about loved ones in the other world, right now as I'm thinking about the people that are watching right now or who may watch this later on. They're very perceptive of that, not the details in the natural sense, but my affections and loves. And so when those affections and loves fall asleep, and really go to sleep, and the Lord's really doing the work of quiescence of all those things about me, they're aware. They're no longer working with Michael's consciousness the way they were before. So it's like when I'm preaching and I look out at the congregation and I realize somebody's missing from church. Because you generally all sit where you usually sit. Right now I look out and everybody's missing. But on a quote-unquote normal Sunday, when I look out and see certain people aren't here, I have an awareness of that. Now, we all do, right? We all say, I wonder how so-and-so's doing. I didn't see him at church. So the spiritual world, of course, is much better at that kind of organizational, social, spiritual connection. The fellowship that they experience working with us on a day-to-day basis when things aren't normal, then celestial angels become assigned or are just aware and are present to receive me as I wake up. It's interesting to note that we learn about all these things because Swedenborg himself was given the experience of dying, quote unquote. His heart and his lungs slowed way down. The Lord arranged that those spiritual associations that he did have perceived he was gone, passed from this life, left. And so he was able to consciously see and experience all these things, but the spirits and spiritual associations believed he had passed away, so he could write down exactly what the normal person experiences when they actually do make the final transition. And we understand from putting together the things he wrote that it was actually taking place on March 1st of 1748. Just an interesting thing. With about 2 weeks from now or so, it was a time of year that Swedenborg himself underwent this death, near death, full death experience. So the Lord doesn't need any angelic help in the first stage. He does what he does from his own divine power with what is of his own with people, what is of the Lord's own with us. We call them states of remains. We call them the Lord's own. And they're separated and made distinct from our own. The next step has to do with the celestial angels who become aware of their presence with us, our presence with them. And one of the fascinating things is they're in a meditative state. They don't talk. We're not awake yet. It says they induce their face upon our face. And their celestial loves, their beautiful, peaceful serenity is gifted to us just by being in their sphere. We're in the spiritual world. We are right now, but fully in the spiritual world there. And our eyes are closed. We have a feeling of warmth. And we don't feel like it's somebody else forcing something on us. It's just we're brought in by means of, it says, the imposition or the impression, the inducing of their face upon our face. They're not touching us. They're just making our face a reflection of their own face. It's not a puppety thing, like they're pulling strings. It's a very celestial and a beautiful state that we come into, and we're unaware of it. The third state is that first beginning awareness of it. And that is where we recognize something's with me, something's around me. I'm experiencing something. It's beautiful. I don't see it. And my consciousness is waking up, and I feel like somebody else is here. Somebody else is so with me that they've induced their face upon me. It doesn't go into great detail about what the spirit waking up feels. It simply says, when the celestial angels then, these guardians, these people who love us so tenderly, when they begin to perceive that we're recognizing that our face is not really ours, there's something about the way we're feeling in the five senses that are pretty well in our consciousness, unified in our eyes and our ears and our mouth and our nose, the skin on our cheeks and lips. There's something else there. As soon as they recognize that we recognize that, they withdraw, so that we have a sense that we're waking up, not somebody else with us is waking up. But the fact is, nobody in this process, so that's the third state of just waking up, third state of resuscitation. So the resurrection, you might say, is the beginning, the next part. The people that are with us, the angels who are with us, they never actually withdraw. They allow for and know and are perceptive of our need to withdraw. And they don't do anything to keep us in this angelic state. No, you must stay here. We love you so much. Be here with us. Nothing like that. So we first have a need of an awareness, and it brings with it a sense of a warmth. Their impression of themselves upon our faces, the induction, is a sensation of warmth or just of love. Again, we're in a spiritual body. We are now, but our natural bodies have gone. So we're being introduced to the use of our spiritual body. And the first one is that the use of our face and the sense of warmth. There's not a whole feeling of the rest of our bodies, but it talks about that the spiritual angels then who come and are present with us as we wish to leave the celestial sensation of the angels at our face. The spiritual ones give us that sensation that there's light. The Arcana Coelestia reveals that there is an unveiling of the Spirit's face, and perhaps you've heard of the expression, off the left eye. It's a very popular, wonderful YouTube channel, ministry of I believe, Swedenborg Foundation, that presents just fantastic videos with graphics and illustrations and great speakers about teachings from the new church. And its name is taken from this section in the Word of the new church that talks about the first thing, that as we become aware that there is light, but we have no vision, we just have an awareness of light, is that there is this taking away of something, and I'm using my right side, so something off of the left eye that begins to give more light. There's an unveiling overall of something off of the whole face, and the eyes and the face become our own, become used the way we are sort of used to using them. And you have to recognize that, I mentioned before, we're not in a total aware state of here we are. So this is a gradual waking up. So as it is coming out of a dream, or as it is sometimes being in a dream, you know something is going on and it's not quite normal, but the fact that it isn't normal or the fact that it's new isn't a big deal. It's just what you're experiencing. There's not a lot of reflection. There's not a lot of self-awareness and reflection as we have it, as we think we have it right now. One of the passages in the writings say that scarcely a day intervenes after the death of the body before people are in the other life. 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. Jesus said to the people crucified with him, "Today, this day you shall be with me in paradise." How long is it? Let's not measure spiritual things by natural days. So as the celestial angels have allowed the person to wake up, they've given him everything they can, the spiritual angels reveal, taking the veiling off of the left eye, the right eye, the face. Next, the person finds themselves coming into an awareness of where they are, who they are. And rereading this, I had forgotten this passage that I want to make mention of, that we come waking up and we begin to associate, we begin to stand on our own feet, and you could think about it coming out of an operation in a hospital, and you finally are awake, and they bring you everything you need, and you put your feet over the side, and you stand up, and you take a breath or two, and you begin getting dressed and going about your daily work. And all of a sudden you find yourself, all of a sudden, or in no time, or in absolutely no time, find yourself among the natural angels, or angels that are kind of ready to just do stuff with you. It talks about being in the lowest or natural heaven. Now, if you're a celestial angel, you'll pass through these stages because they're bringing together what is of all three stages of our life, all the remains that we have that are celestial, spiritual, and natural. And so we're phasing down through them to awaken in a natural state, a state with the natural angels, a state that we can then proceed out of. But it says that there's a sensation of getting on a horse. And you think, well, is this true for everyone, or is this just somebody? Because I haven't been on a horse for a long time. Am I going to get on a horse in the other world, or will it be something corresponding to what this would be like? A person seems to themselves to then be in the flower of their youth. Well, that'll be nice. So you're now, wow. And you're not reflecting on this a lot, going, oh my goodness, I was 68 when I passed away in the natural world. I was 99. And now it looks like I'm only 14. I'm 16. I'm 18. Again, it's not a lot of reflection, but you have that feeling. And it says, they feel as if they're riding on a horse, which, strangely enough, can't move them a step in the direction that they would want to go, because they would want to take it to hell. And so the spirit, waking up, gets off the horse and goes by foot. Is this everybody? It talks about this being a sort of a part of encapsulating what it's like when you're waking up and you want to just be taken somewhere. You want to get on the horse and go. And when you gallop away and you're in your proprium, you're going to gallop right towards hell. The horse represents the understanding and the use of the understanding, and you get off and you go by foot, because it represents the use of smaller cognitions, or a lesser grand way of exiting, and just the natural progression. We will have to all sink back into the state of our proprial life that was alive while on earth. Right? One of the most wonderful things about the teachings of the New Church about the other world is knowing you don't have to repeat the same mistakes. And you don't get punished for the mistakes you made while on earth. It's not like you're going to get off that horse, you're all of a sudden going to be starting to do your journey into the other world, and you're going to come across this guy with a list looking like a police officer at the gates saying, all right, you got to pay for this, 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 this. We're going to tax you for that. Before you get into the, go through the gates like at the border, you got to do all this paperwork. Because look at all the stuff you did wrong. That, again, there's this idea that, yeah, there's this book of life, and there's all these deeds written down in it, and you're going to have to pay for everything you did wrong. You only have to pay for what you are trying to sneak through pretending that you didn't do it. It's only if you're trying to smuggle stuff from one state of the world, natural, spiritual world, into the next. Those who are totally honest have nothing to fear. Nobody made it through living on this planet, living here on earth, without making some mistakes, without repeating a number of mistakes, without forming a habit of doing things that are just not nice, not right. And some of us are worse than others, right? Or at least you can point to other people and say, they look like they're worse than me. Or you might point at other people and say, they look like they're so much better than me. When will we stop doing that, making those comparisons? The point here is that as we're waking up and as we're going through our journey in the other world, the Lord will bring us to judge ourselves of all the things that we've done. It's wonderful. It's horrible. It's wonderful. Some people don't like going to the doctor because the doctor might give them some news they don't want to hear. Is that wonderful or horrible? Sometimes you find out when things are going a certain way in a relationship that these other things have happened with that person in another relationship, or you're coming to meet somebody, you're trying to become friends with somebody, then you hear the story and you find out some horrible things might have happened in their life. Is that wonderful that you finally found that out, or is that horrible? Well, it's the same thing with each one of us. It's a wonderful thing. It's a fantastic thing. We've been given the teachings already to tell us, let us know that the Lord isn't there to try to punish us for the things we did. He wants us to recognize that without Him, we will go back and do those things some more. Are we done with doing that? Hopefully in this world we've made progress and realized some of the things that we repeated as bad ways of living, we've given up. We're more and more following the teachings of the Lord's Word. We're more and more trying to understand the nature of the Lord and His relationship with us and our relationship with Him. We're making progress. So the first full state of life in the other world is coming to journey with our affections, coming to wake up and recognize what our inventory is. What is our agenda? What is our what's the right word for when you're on a trip and you do, you have that program that you're laid out. Words escaping me. But you're going to follow along with the prescribed affections that you have that will reintroduce you to the memory of the things you did with those affections, under the influence of those affections. And whether you want to return to them, whether you need to do more work around them, you're going to make your journey. And it's said to be like a circuit that we take till we find our eternal home. In Hugo Odhner's book, there's a whole section, not that long, but just talks about the nature of the resuscitation of infants and how they don't go through the same stages because they haven't lived a life where they've made their own the things that are of their natural hereditary evils and falsities, the appearances that have come to them as children. Where that stage is, if you talk to sophomore boys, as I did when I was teaching Heaven and Hell, and it talks about infants not being, or children not being responsible. And of course, inevitably one will ask, well, that means if I committed suicide now, I would go to heaven because I wouldn't be held responsible for me. And of course, the answer is kind of like, well, if you're old enough now to be reflecting on it, you got some responsibility to take for your actions. When do we become mature enough to really take responsibility for our actions? There's a whole section in true Christian religion called imputation. When are things imputed to us, and how are they imputed to us? In what states of freedom and rationality? These things are sorted out in the other world. We'll get clarity about why it was at 22 we did such and such, or at 44, or at 59, or whatever stages we're passing through, and we look back upon them at 64 and go, what happened to me at 50? What was that? Why was that? Have I dealt with that now? Or are those same affections reappearing? And the journey through the steps or the stages in the other life have to do with those things reappearing. We live at first, as it were, as Hugo Odhner talks about it, as being in a house of memory. All the memories that we have are being able to be dusted off and seen to be of what value they are, and if of some value, we reflect upon them more. If of no value, we throw them out. Nothing is lost of all the things, all the memories that we had of the other world. You don't have any privacy in this world, and you don't have any privacy in the other world. Yes and no. In this world, you kind of wonder, is anything private anymore? With our connection being plugged in to the World Wide Web, if we're at all connected, what do people know about us? People are trying constantly to look at our affections by means of what we're purchasing, what we're interested in, what things we read, and making choices for us to then feed us certain things that we'll click on because we're interested. And all you have to do is write down that you're wanting to buy a new winter coat, and you've looked at a couple different stores and been on Amazon and checked out some reviews there. All of a sudden, you just see all these things about coats for some strange. They appear in your news feed or whatever, because that's the nature of what people are doing with making a living online, and they're making a living at our expense. It's a privilege to be able to be online, and I know there's a cost to it. Spiritually speaking, you get to the other world, and there's an algorithm of heaven running that is in connection with all of your affections. It has to be that way, because as of ourselves, we have and are nothing. We are simply the receptacle of what is from the other world, what comes to us from God, what we've imputed and made our own, and then our attachments to those things by a habit of living through them, around them. So we're never alone. Now that's sort of yucky if you think about it, and you go, oh my goodness. But as a parent, when you're taking care of your child and you never leave them alone, they do what they need to do, and it's not like you have that much interest in the things that they're doing that are just normal processes. And it's the same way with our celestial and spiritual angels who are always with us. They're providing for us at all times, and they want us to work through those deepest, darkest secrets, but they're not there to shame us, and they're not ever invading our privacy on that level. And yet, if we were ever left totally alone, we'd stop breathing, our spiritual heart would stop beating. We live by means of an association, living in a body, the body of the Lord, if we're heaven-bound, and there's never a cell that's in the body that's not connected somehow with the other cells, receiving life from the Lord through their arrangement of the organization of the human body, or the grand man, I mean. So it's something to keep in mind as we think on earth we can have our secret life. There's no such thing as a secret life. And especially we'll realize that when we get to the other world, that we have not had a secret life. One of the passages that I want to read out of the Arcana has to do with just an awareness of this teaching, that we can apply it to ourselves now. Whatever a person has done in the life of the body successively returns in the other life. So does all that the person has ever thought. Oh, this isn't hurting anybody. I'm just thinking it by myself. Okay. It's registered. When their hatreds, bitterness, deceits, they will return. And the person against whom they had bitterness, hatred, or who they had secretly plotted and made plots against, these all return. And the person to whom they were directing those thoughts becomes present to them. And this happens in a moment. So we've all woken up in the spiritual world now in this discussion, and we're going about our process, and something's going to trigger when we're ready to be able to be triggered. Something's going to trigger some thoughts we had about somebody that we didn't like. You might wonder if they're in hell. Yeah, they're probably in, yeah. Let them burn in hell. Well, if you ever had that kind of a thought towards somebody, as soon as I attach the person in my mind with that triggering thought, guess who comes up from hell? Or maybe they're actually in heaven, right? But they'll be there, and we're going to have to deal with what it was that gave us such pleasure, why we kept going back to thinking about that person and wishing that they would burn in hell. Take care of that stuff now. That's what this is about. Figure out what it is that you're going through, that you have hatred or enmity or bitterness or a lack of desire to be nice to that person. Such is the case with the other world, in the other world. But concerning this, the Lord's mercy later on, the thoughts that a person has harbored against others make their appearance openly. You don't have privacy that way. You can't sit and think nasty thoughts about people. Not that anybody, not any of you people watching now are doing that, right? I know, because there's a perception of all thoughts. Hence come some lamentable states. For there are concealed within people these concealed hatreds, and they will break out openly. With the evil, all their evil deeds and thoughts, these return in the other life, but not so with the good. With these, all their good states of friendship and love return, attended with the highest degree of happiness and delight. So we just pray that we can be good. And we just recognize as soon as that evil thought comes in, we go, I don't want to do this. It's hard, isn't it? Because we get something out of nursing resentments. There wouldn't be a phrase called nursing resentments unless it was something that was commonly done by a lot of people. A lot of people nurse resentments. A lot of people carry on bitter hatred, want to get revenge towards other people years later. People could be dead and in the other world, and you could still be thinking, what they did to me, I'm going to get them. So deal with that now. That's the blessing. The blessing of knowing these horrible states can return is we can deal with them now. We can deal with them now. And it's important that we do. So in the other world, somebody who is an angel in heaven, and you're going to be really ticked off they didn't go to hell, right? They're an angel in heaven, and you call them up, and they'll help you get through what it was that they did wrong. Because if they did something wrong, they're really sorry for it. They will have tried to make whatever amends they could have, and are we. We need to do that work now. One of the things that's mentioned about this journey, waking up in the other world, is that there's a big highway, a big road. It comes down from the north, and we all get on this freeway, and I say come down from the north. Of course, there's no up and down like that in the other world, but there's this northern highway. Because north stands for ignorance. We're all going to be somewhat ignorant, no matter how much we've learned about the spiritual world. We really have to learn by being there. And we get processed sort of at this, it doesn't say that it's a roundabout type of thing, but we're going to get processed in this journey, and we'll start heading through the circuit and eventually come off and head towards our spiritual home. After we've gotten rid of those resentments and hatreds towards other people, after we've looked through the things that we've done that we need to review, after we've been able to fulfill the good desires we've had about certain people, too. I mean, it's good work that's done as well. So we are in this first state. It's an, as it were, natural state. And I want to read this paragraph out of page 76 from The Spiritual World by Hugo Odhner that I've made reference to. Does not every reasonable, I'm going to say person, he says man, doesn't every reasonable person even on earth desire long life devoid of illness? Does he not wish for every protection against disturbance of the peace, against foreign invaders, domestic criminals? Doesn't the person want assurance against an oppressive government and lawless mobs? And the right to worship whatever God he knows? Personal liberty is to follow out his talents and carry on the uses which they cherish, to taste of the fruits of their labor, and to their life with legitimate comforts and a variety of diversions. A place in society to their liking. Sufficiency of food and clothing, a guarantee against economic disaster. Does a person not wish for a partner and a home where these things can be realized? The freedom to progress, to seek knowledge, to pursue education, to practice and enjoy the creative arts. Does not human research constantly look to the conquest of the limitations of space and time to produce freer communication of minds and a more universal understanding among nations and races, as well as to solve the riddle of the stars? This was written, I think, in 1958, so just beginning to the world of space exploration. These are the things people dream of and are fit and wish to strive for. All those things mentioned are taken with us. And when I title Many Happy Returns, it's the happy return of what we do that provides for all the good things that have been mentioned. All the uses of society, of education, of the arts, government, all those good things that we want, will find a place there in the other world to use our gifts to proceed with helping society become a better place, heavenly society, of course, as well. On page 116 and onward in the book, The Spiritual World, Hugo Lj talks about the meeting of husbands and wives. There's several different places, as mentioned before. Conjugal love especially talks about husbands and wives meeting each other in the other world. Heaven and Hell section on it there, and are also in the Arcana Coelestia. Almost everyone who has lived in marriage in the world after death either meets with their husband or wife if they have died first, or they await their partner if you've died first. But I'm not talking to you, right? Not you who have left already. So it says that usually they congratulate each other. Well, why? Why do you congratulate somebody? Well, because a lot of us are really afraid of dying. And once we get to the point where we're ready to meet our partner, they congratulate you. Look, you see, hooray, welcome, congratulations. It wasn't that bad, right? And when we get to the other world and meet our partner who's been waiting in the spiritual world, however long it's been, in the natural world, we won't have that worry when we get to the other world. So we don't have to think, oh my goodness, they probably left without me. No, especially if we're reflecting that way about our loved one in the other world. They haven't left without us. Are you still thinking about them? Then they haven't left. The spirit of the one dwells with the spirit of the other in partners who love each other. Now, if you did not have a happy marriage and your partner has passed on, and it's not that you're thinking about them all the time because you're going to you have some things you're going to tell them when you get to the other world. That's what I was talking about earlier. Let go. Figure that out. Let go. So that you're not dwelling with them. And their spirit isn't dwelling with you. And if it really wasn't the partner that you're going to spend eternity with, they will be moving on. Because you're not dwelling with them. But no partner in the other world is moving on if you, while here, are thinking about them, hoping things are well with them, hoping they're waiting for you. Because that hope is the love that you have for that person. It's there present with them. I love that passage. I love mentioning it to people that when we reflect upon anybody, whether it's our married partner or a friend or a parent on earth, a statement made that if I am thinking about my mother or my father who have passed on, and really wondering or concerned with something, I've just reread some letters actually, and this is a true story, talking with my siblings, some letters I found that my father wrote when he was a much younger man, in his 30s, and then when he wrote to me when I was a kid. And I spent some time thinking and reflecting upon what that was about and what it meant to me. So it says that when an individual on earth is doing that, the person can see them in the other world. They see them quietly off somewhere, not hopefully sitting on a horse that's not moving. But it could be somewhere. And they're present. They can see us. And in some ways it talks about us being able to be present with them. If they approach and say our name, we'll wake up as if we've like had a spiritual experience, which we did. It's not a way to try to get in touch with and have a seance or some sort of one-on-one communication with a person of the other world. But it's a great comfort, I think, to think that if your partner has passed on into the other world, they're very aware of you, you're thinking about them. You're missing them a lot. That affection that you have for them is a spiritual affection. And that is an energy that they can feel. There's no time in the other world. They're not waiting to get on to the next thing and you're holding them up. If you ever watch the movie What Dreams May Come, it's a beautiful movie. I love so much about it. But one of the things that is that the man who has been killed, his wife's suicidal and going through mental illness because of everything that happened. She lost her 2 children. Now she lost her husband. She's depressed. She's sick. That he can't let go of her, and so he's talking to her. He's seeing her. He's approaching her at the funeral. She's having this sick feeling of something's wrong. He gets her to do automatic writing. He says, "I am here." That is an extreme case. There is automatic writing. There is that kind of spiritual possession. If we really want to open up and channel ourselves to the other world, spirits will take advantage of that. But your partner in the other world isn't trying to upset you, isn't trying to plague you with a memory of them so that you never forget. And we ourselves are not going to be plaguing them by thinking about them a lot and hoping everything is well with them and wondering when we're going to see each other again. Those are perfectly fine feelings and thoughts to have. And our partner can see us. And they're not going to be trying to interfere by interjecting themselves and getting us to write things as messages from them to us. Not if our partners are in good places in the other world, they're not. They're just going to be aware, and we're just going to continue that bond. And that's why it says the spirit of one dwells with the spirit of the other. And I think it's a really important thing to reflect and take comfort in. There's no time in the other world. So it's not like they're going, okay, it's been 30 years today. Whew, I'm out of here. And I sort of joke about that, but I know people will hear that passage and go, well, they'll wait for 30 years in the world of spirits. People will be in the world of spirits, and then if they're ready for heaven, they're gone. It's not over. They never spend over 30 years. I didn't even look up that passage because I want to focus on that. People hear that and go, oh my goodness, my husband died 29 and 364 days ago. So, no. Your heart dwelling with their heart is maintaining a relationship. And that's important just to know. They're with you. They're congratulating you even yet that you're continuing to do what you need to do on earth to be the conjugal partner you want to be and to be the angel of the Lord that makes you a fit partner when you get to the other world. So I wanted to end on that passage of talking about many happy returns. We're going to have many happy returns of the states of love that we've had with our partners on earth, of the states of love that we've had with our parents, with our siblings, with our children, with our extended family, with our church community. The best things that we've done in this world stay with us and they return. The best people that we've known and loved with our hearts that are in the other world or in this world, when we leave, they will come to us. We'll have many happy returns of good states. It's a wonderful set of teachings that we have about what it is to wake up in the other world, what it is to be present for one another, us with the angels, us with the people that are spirits that have departed in the last year or two or 10 or 20 or 50, that we're one community. And that's what's beautiful about the church. The church is an outpost of heaven. It's the kingdom of God on earth in our hearts. And that kingdom, all the things that have taken place in it, the Lord keeps these things. They remain with us. And those many states of good things will return. Thank you.